Okay, thank you. I've been asked to do three things. First of all, to come to this from my own perspective. Secondly, to make a very brief introduction to the piece. And thirdly, to identify some questions on which we could base the further discussion. And I'm going to do the third thing first, because otherwise I might run out of time before I do it, and I think it's the most important thing. I suggest that we should look at these, think about these questions in our discussions. In what way or ways or contexts is commons a useful concept? And secondly, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of using this concept? So it's in what way or ways or contexts is commons a useful concept, and what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages of using this concept? That's what I suggest we should be framing our discussion around. But I'm going to next introduce myself, starting in my 30s, pass quickly over the time before that, when, as a result of reading the World Wildlife Fund's magazines, I became gravely concerned about the destruction of other species by humanity, and humanity generally not living in a sustainable relationship with the natural world. Something was seriously wrong, and for me it was a heart thing. Was there anything I could do about it? Politics didn't seem to be addressing basic issues, and I got involved in my sort of search for, I suppose, making some contribution. I got involved in various bottom-up initiatives, organising a green fair, first of all in Colchester, where I lived, and then in London when I moved to London, linking the green organisations around the 32 London boroughs through an organisation we set up called the London 21 Sustainability Network. So what we were doing there was creating a structure to enable action, the action of working together in between different boroughs. And that's been a pattern of much of my life since then, is creating structures to enable action. Supporting international environmental lawyers through an organisation called FIELD, which I helped to set up, Foundation for International Environmental Law and Development. And for the last 10 years, I've been part of the Gloughjordan Ecovillage, where I live. My work in London brought me up against mainstream power, the all-pervading power of the City of London, when even the election of an independent left-wing mayor in the shape of Ken Livingstone made very little difference. And it was hard to find a way of thinking about that. It seemed to be like being up against a concrete wall or something, which wasn't really very helpful, until I was introduced to systems thinking, in particular the concept of complex adaptive systems. And this I found, and still find, immensely helpful. I would, using language of the last speaker, illuminating abstraction, looking at things in terms of complex adaptive systems. And I was a joint author with Roy Madron of a book, Guy and Democracies, published by the Schumacher Society, which is about complex adaptive systems and seeing our existing system of governance economics as a complex adaptive system, which we call the global monetocracy. And we saw nation states and representative democracy as part of that, as part of the problem. We emphasized the immense importance of the purpose of the system. That's the thing that the system does. It's very important to identify actually what the purpose of a system is, because that controls what the system is capable of doing, something like its DNA. And guided by the late Richard Douthwaite, we realized that the key purpose of the global monetocracy was to maintain the bank-created debt-based money system for the benefit of the wealthy elite. That is the actual systemic purpose of it, and which it continues to do, come what may, how it adapts to enable itself to continue to do that. And our definition of the global monetocracy certainly includes neoliberal version of capitalism, but that is only one component of it. There's a whole lot of other components, as you'll see. This book is here, if you'd like to look at it. It's the whole system. I then helped Richard Douthwaite and others, other members of FASTA, to create a place to host discussion and development of ideas. That's basically what FASTA is all about. It's not so much about promoting and promulgating them. We're not very good at that, but we try to develop ideas, which is perhaps we should be organizing this event today. And indeed, that has fed into the way we are organizing ourselves in the Ecovillage, based on Stafford Beer's viable systems model, which we have been using to help us organize ourselves. But my main interest over the last 5 years has been trying to put into action ideas which were developed by members of FASTA to combat climate change. In particular, to reduce emissions from fossil fuels. That's what I've been trying to work on over the last 5 years and not doing very well. And I think some of the ideas that are going to come out of today will be helpful, have already been helpful. I'm looking at that as a commons. I'm looking at the Earth's atmosphere as a commons. Because it has a vital climate regulation function, and we, the human family, depend on that. We need to protect it from pollution in the shape of excessive carbon emissions into the atmosphere. And we can't leave that to nation-state governments because they are failing to address that global issue adequately. So this is highly relevant, this idea of the commons is highly relevant to me, to my work, and I'd be very interested, if anybody else is interested in that particular application of it, to talk to them. I think we need to go back to, the way to get something like that off the ground is to go back to our basic nature as human beings, our potential as human beings, which at the moment the global monetocracy is actually preventing us from flourishing as human beings. And that's described in a book which I'm one of the authors, Sharing for Survival, published by FASTA. I wrote chapter 5, which just describes that bit of work. Anyway, so that's me, and how long have I got now out of 7 minutes? What? I've already done 8 minutes, so I've got very little time to introduce the paper which I'm meant to be talking about. The paper, Commons Against and Beyond Capitalism, which I've been asked to introduce, was written by two giants of the world of workers' and women's activism, has already been mentioned, and anti-capitalist and anti-globalization movements. It's expressed in language of Marxist writing and thinking. And that's a world which I'm completely unfamiliar with. I've never been part of it. I've never been involved in it. So although I probably share with these authors similar left-wing and green values, the headspace in which that article is written, in which their lives exist, feels like another world to me. It's another language, and I actually find it very hard to introduce it or to engage with it. I was extremely interested in what Gustavo had to say, and I think I share his attitude very largely. And as they're not here, I suggest that it probably wouldn't be useful for us to spend much time discussing their particular points, or that's my own view anyway. They're saying, what do we mean by anti-capitalist commons? I don't find that a very useful concept or question. How can we create out of the commons our struggles? Out of the commons our struggles bring into existence a new mode of production no longer built on the exploitation of labor. And how can we prevent commons from being co-opted and, instead of providing an alternative to capitalism, becoming platforms on which a sinking capitalist class can reconstruct its fortunes? Those are their questions. They make a number of introductory points, then they make a number of points about the commons, and in conclusion they say, commons are a commitment to the creation of a collective or multiple collective subjects, commitment to the fostering of the common interest in every aspect of our life and political work, and a commitment, therefore, to the rejection of all hierarchies and inequalities and all principles of othering and exclusion. That is their conclusion. They're apparently generally in favor of commons. I don't think they think that there's any commons that we can point to at the moment that are actually good examples of what they're saying we should be looking for. For example, they take the main lobster fishery, which is a wonderful example of commoning, where the local fishermen and fishing community are managing their own business in a very commons-like way, and very successfully preserving the resource and living well and having a happy time. But these writers write them off as being unhelpful to a anti-capitalist communism, because those fishermen are selling their lobsters onto the market. So therefore they're not part of a useful system, apparently, which I find very strange. So that's the introduction, for what it's worth. Thank you.